Bronxville Village Board of Trustees meeting for April 12th, 2021. Do I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We will start our meeting. I just want to start with the mayor's report, and first off, congratulate my two wonderful colleagues, the Deputy Mayor Robert Underhill and Trustee William Fredericks, on their re-elections. So congratulations, gentlemen. I just think we have the best team of 5 going. So I'm so pleased we are continuing. I would just like a short mayor's report just to kind of alert the public that we have been working on the operating budget, which we will have a motion tonight talking about it, but our next step is the capital plan. And just to give people an idea, and frankly requesting their input if they feel there's some streets that need repaving or infrastructure issues. We're going to be working on our phase 3 of our sewer televising and cleaning. We are going to be finishing up our DPW building. We are going to have a $450,000 curbing and paving program. And we're also looking at doing some upgrades at Bacon Woods Park, which is the park that straddles Kensington Road and Sagamore Road, and also do some upgrading at Sagamore Play Park. Some of our equipment is quite well worn. And then frankly, also look at our comprehensive plan, where the overriding request from villagers was to make the village as walkable as possible and to make sure we keep the infrastructure as in good shape as possible. So I think I can speak for my colleagues that these will probably be the guiding principles as we go into a comprehensive plan. Just one other kind of footnote, just there was some misinformation out there about our farmers market. Our farmers market is here to stay. We were one of the first farmers markets. In fact, Trustee Underhill and I were on the board that gave $15,000 to the chamber to form a farmers market. What the village did was offer our Chamber of Commerce the option of moving it in a test case if they wanted to craft the Craft Avenue lot, just in an effort, frankly, to get more foot traffic for some of our businesses who are badly in need of a little shot in the arm. The decision entirely rests with the Chamber of Commerce, and we will facilitate it if they want to move, and if they don't want to move, absolutely fine, and it will stay in its original home in perpetuity. So just a clarification, and then I will turn it over to the village administrator.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I too just wanted to start out by congratulating Trustee Fredericks and Deputy Mayor Underhill on your recent elections. Congratulations again. Thank you for your tireless commitments to the village. Just such a long family history of residency in the village. Just very, very touching by all of you, for that matter. Okay, Mayor, just a couple quick items. Today, Con Ed finished a couple of test pits for a potential new gas line extension down Midland Avenue. I had reached out to all those neighboring residents along that stretch of Midland Avenue and advised them of that. And the test pits were to determine the soil conditions where they would anticipate putting the gas line in. And the test pit work is done, and the gas line work will be scheduled for sometime this summer, ideally when school is out. And this would be a continuation of the line that ended in the vicinity of the Women's Club. And the new gas line would extend down Midland Avenue to the vicinity of Vine Street. So just wanted to mention that. There'll be more details forthcoming, but kind of was just doing some of the investigative work right now because frankly, I wanted to get a sense of the duration of the project because they did hit significant amount of rock with the previous section of pipe that was put in. So results on that will be pending. Let's see, I just also wanted to mention that we have put our new tennis permit applications up on the village website, and the tennis courts were getting a final cleanup today. So those hard courts will be open this coming weekend. Of course, the clay courts open up a little later because that is dependent on the resurfacing of those courts. And we scheduled that with the tree contractor. You've already mentioned the DPW building, so I guess that's it. We'll just get right into the rest of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion for the approval of 2 sets of minutes, our March 8th regular meeting minutes and our March 30th budget work session minutes. Do I have a motion?
Should we move them together or separately?
Together we can do them. So
I will
Mary,
second that motion.
Okay, and do I have a second?
I will second Mary's motion.
Okay, all those in favor of our 2 sets of minutes? Aye.
Aye.
I opposed. And again, thank you to Mary Ann Magliotta. She does a terrific job for us. Now tonight we have 3 public hearings. Mr. Palmer, do you want to start with the first one, Local Law 5, 2021?
Yes, so the first public hearing is the property tax cap override. This is the legislation that requires, in the event if the village is going to adopt a budget that exceeds the allowable tax cap limit, the board has to, by a supermajority, agree to override that tax cap. Did you make a motion then to open that public hearing? I can't recall. Did we get a motion?
No, I need to make a motion. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I need a motion to open the public hearing to discuss this local law. Do I have someone? Okay, Deputy Mayor moved it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Knapp, second. All in favor of opening the hearing? Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Okay, so, and just as some background again, although we cover this every year. So this is something that's considered in conjunction with the budget, since, as I stated, each year, the tax cap legislation has to be considered if a community is going to be overriding the allowable limit. Has to be considered in conjunction with and before the adoption of the municipal budget. So in this case, the legislation requires that the tax levy cannot exceed 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. That's the legislation. This year's allowable tax cap for communities with a fiscal year commencing on 6/1 of 2021 is 1.3%. And if you go to the controller's website, each of the different periods, depending on when a community's fiscal year commences, is going to have its own allowable tax cap amount, and it's going to be slightly different since the timing of the fiscal year is a little bit different. But for communities with a fiscal year beginning on 6/1, it's 1.3%. So, and that's because the rate of inflation, as determined by the New York State Department of Labor, is less than 2%. So, with that being said, as the municipal budget currently stands, with our projected levy increase of 3.6%, that would require an override by the village board.
I think village administrator is going to end up to be that we're only going to be above it, believe it or not, by $47,000. But I think we came as close as we could because frankly, with our state mandates of pensions, healthcare, and workman's compensation, they themselves went over the 1.3. So the override for those listening would be in the amount of about $47,000. But we do need to undertake this motion so it coincides with the budget adoption.
Right. And as some additional background, and I should say also for anyone who wants to have an opportunity to review the budget and why the board is considering the tax cap override is you can find the municipal budget, the proposed budget on the village's website under the Treasurer's Department page, along with the budgets for past years. But the proposed budget is on the Treasurer's page. We also have a hard copy available here at Village Hall. And as the mayor was stating, as proposed, we're exceeding the allowable cap, the equivalent of the one exceeding the cap of 3.6% is the equivalent of 112,000, just over $112,000. However, should the board decide to use as one of the alternatives that I presented in the budget with you, was to consider using some of the monies. If everyone could just make sure they're perhaps on mute when they're thank you. So if the board should consider using the additional 65,000 from the American Rescue Plan, then that would further reduce that. We would just be exceeding the cap, as the mayor said, by under $50,000. But again, tax cap levy this year, 1.3 for villages, but one of the significant drivers, ironically, in the budget this year is our employee and police retirement systems. And as I think I mentioned in the budget work session, that amount alone this year, our contribution to the retirement systems are increasing by almost $240,000, $238,000 to be exact. And while a small portion of our retirement system contribution is exempt under the tax cap, fact of the matter is that's a majority of or really the reason for the override. And as I explained to you, that's because the retirement system actuarial analysis is always based on a 5-year look back, and the 5-year look back includes up to and including the period up to 3/30 of 2020. And obviously, as of March 30th of last year, the stock market had lost more than 1/3 of its value. So thereby, the investment rate of return was down significantly. And not to draw this out, but remember, the retirement system contributions come from employees, member contributions, the employer contributions, as we've just identified with our increase, and then also from the return on the investments. And the return on the investments is a significant piece. So this was a big discussion within NICOM. The controller's office didn't want to change that actuarial analysis and the 5-year look back. They said over time, these would even out. Of course, since that time, obviously, the equities market has returned significantly. So next year, we shouldn't see that kind of increase. But again, 5-year look back is through last year. So I think it's just worth noting that that's a significant reason for why we have to exceed that allowable amount of 1.3%.
Any trustee comment or question? Since it's a public hearing, I of course will offer to the public on this particular topic, but I wanted to ask the trustees first.
Just a question, Jim. Does Moody's have any particular opinion one way or the other on municipalities overriding the tax cap?
To be honest with you, you know what, I don't necessarily want to speak for Moody's, but I would say actually they would be they would be supportive of overriding a tax cap if it meant that municipalities are budgeting conservatively and taking into account their true budgets and not simply trying to meet a number that was, well, frankly, that is in the past several years has been under the, well under the 2%. And so it's, if communities are just staying under the cap for the sake of doing so and using significant amount of fund balance to do it, they would be against it.
Right, thank you.
And I assume, Jim, that Moody's also, this is Mary, that Moody's is supportive of paying pension obligations. I mean, they're liabilities and they would want us to pay those in due course, I assume.
Yes, absolutely. And it's worth noting that, again, the village has always, we don't amortize our pension obligations. We pay that money upfront for some additional savings. So this is something that NICOM always mentions, the controller's office mentions. Some communities do try to pay those over time, but essentially you're paying interest for that. So, so that's your answer. Yep.
Yep, thank you.
Any other trustee comment? Seeing none, I'm going to open it to anyone who would like to discuss the property tax cap override.
So Mr. Abbott has his hand up on the.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you, Trustee Behrens. My name is Brer Abbott, writing for the Bronxville Surrealist. And this is a comment that's really a criticism of myself because as familiar as I am, and Jim, thank you for your excellent explanation of this. This is my problem, which is that I always try to sit down and just write for a Martian, well, what a tax cap is. And I can't do it. I can't put it in simple language. So, and this isn't a challenge, it's not a question, but if there were a way of defining what a tax cap is, and then in these terms, which is, well, is it different for different villagers? Like if you live in a house, if you live in an apartment, is your view of it different? But then I really return to, and this is the last I'm going to say, just to keep it brief, is, well, how does it relate to the state? How does it relate to New York State? And thank you. I'm sorry about my disheveled commentary. Thank you.
No, Mr. Abbott, I can say that it affects everyone the same. And to your point, the misnomer out there is perhaps that it was looked at that you wouldn't increase your budget like every year, adding 2% of more programs or just expanding your budget by 2%. But what most communities, first of all, it's rarely ever 2%, but most communities end up going over a 2% expenditure just by unfunded state mandates and pension and insurance. So it's very hard. It sounds like it's something that please don't add 2% new programs every year. And frankly, nobody is able to do that. Nobody can just sustain their own programs, or for that matter, sustain the state's programs and keep under the tax cap. So I appreciate your comment because that lets us share a little more explanation. Thank you.
And quite frankly, if I can say it, and sadly, the state has made the tax cap complicated, and there actually is a sheet that the treasurer and I work out together because, as I said, the adjustment factor is 1.3%. It's less than inflation. However, there are such things as a slight carryover from previous year. If a community has significant changes in their taxable value, you can get a slight adjustment for that. Communities that might happen to expand beyond their municipal boundaries, you get a slight change for that. And then, of course, we know it also is different from municipalities to school districts in terms of exemptions. So anyway, I probably should put how the tax cap is calculated on our website, but it might also add more confusion for some.
Thank you. Anyone else listening in that would like to comment on the tax cap? No, seeing none, then do I have a motion to close our public hearing?
So moved.
Close.
Okay, and I see a second. All right, all those in favor of closing the hearing? Aye, aye, okay. Hearing is closed. Now we're going on to a hearing on our proposed 2021-2022 proposed village budget. And I just want to say at the onset, I have to thank our treasurer, Lori Boss, and our village administrator, Jim Palmer, who have been at Village Hall every weekend since February, with no exaggeration, working on this budget to get our numbers down. So I thank you, and honestly, I thank the entire staff downstairs who has really helped out with the budget. Mr. Palmer, I know it's on the website. Do you just want to put a quick snapshot of the budget and perhaps the change to the budget that we might make this evening, adding the stimulus money?
Sure. So,
Jim, is this a public hearing on the budget?
I need a
yes.
motion to open this public hearing. Thank you, council. Thank you very much, Mr. Stout.
I move to open the public hearing.
Parliamentary rule. All right, I have, Bill Fredericks will open, and I need a second.
Second.
Second by trustee Knapp. All those in favor? Aye. And now it's an official public hearing.
okay, so let's see, just to recap. So we did have an excellent budget work session on March 30th. We went through the principal revenues and expenses, the principal changes in drivers. So for what was proposed, the levy increase was 3.6%, resulting in a slightly higher tax increase of 3.69. And the reason for that differential was there was a slight drop in taxable value, a slight drop just over $2 million in taxable value. Taxable value still very strong, and actually showed a nice leveling off this year after a drop last year. So our taxable value is just over $3,122,000,000. So again, down slightly. So the levy increase as proposed was 3.6%. What the board did discuss was that you asked me to come up with an alternative option to get that levy below 3%. So what I did circulate to all of you was to consider using $65,000 from the America Cares Act, which would reduce the levy to 2.98%. And to give you an idea of what, again, we're anticipating from that stimulus is 2 payments on or around June 1st of both 21, and then again in June 1 of 2022, approximately $350,000 per year, or a total of $700,000. So the option is that we would simply add in that federal revenue, that money, again, anticipated to come around that time. The tentative budget did not have any of that. So currently the option is to reduce it to 2.98%. So to just go back up again, how do we get to the original levy increase as proposed at 3.6%? Again, all the revenues are on the village website, with the exception of an increase in the sales tax revenue. The other revenues are budgeted downward. We talked about this. Outside of, our non-real property tax revenues are just over 6 million, half of which come from parking related items, parking permits, parking meters, and also fines. With the exception of permits, the other 2 categories have both been adjusted downward. But I am confident that we can continue to meet our permit number, albeit by changing our allocation of our spaces that we provide. And again, when it comes to permits for our viewers, we offer Merchant permits, a variety of different permits for merchants. We offer permits for what we call 24-hour spaces for residents who don't have any on-site parking and have an option to reserve a space 24 hours a day in one of our lots or the garage. And then, of course, we have the commuter permits. So those are the allocations. So again, from a revenue perspective, the biggest really only increase that we saw is we are projecting, we did budget for an increase in the sales tax to 1.3 million. Last year, we had budgeted sales tax at 1,090,000. This year, it's projected that we should actually bring in closer to 1,275,000. Again, today we've just received 2 payments, so the other 2 payments are still pending, but based on all the data, it's likely that we will probably come close to that 1.3. So we feel comfortable, the treasurer and I, recommending adjusting that number up from last year's budget. But otherwise, those other principal revenues are down. So there I just explained 3 of our $6 million in non-real property tax revenues. The other sources include building permits. Those we budget at 425. We're almost at that number now for the current year. So those remain strong. And then, of course, we have our mortgage tax revenues. We have our utilities, gross receipts number, and a variety of other smaller numbers. But again, the principal ones were just what I just explained. So that being said, the revenues grew just slightly from last year, and that's because of the sales tax permits. So on to the expenses. Expenses have grown by 2.98%, and that's principally as a result of our contractual agreements with our collective bargaining units. Also, the additional net principal and interest for the new 2021 bond, which we just issued at the rate of 1.77% for a 22-year bond. And then, of course, what we just discussed earlier, the contributions to the retirement system. Other items that went down slightly or stayed level were items such as our liability premiums, our workers' compensation premiums. Other items that have gone up this year, unemployment insurance. And I wanted to mention that one. The other key piece that we should emphasize with the budget is that for the current year budget, we are using $925,000 from unappropriated fund balance. We're using $925,000 from unassigned fund balance. This matches what we used last year. Although last year, I think we designated it as $800,000 from unassigned fund balance and $125,000 that we had put into tax stabilization. Still $925,000. And then I provided you a sheet that the treasurer had worked on with me showing where we are with unassigned fund balance. And after using the $925,000 in assigned fund balance for the 21-22 year, we will be at just over 38% of unassigned fund balance, not just total fund balance, but unassigned fund balance. And as we also discussed in the work session, I do anticipate that we will not need to use all of the $800,000 that we had assigned in the previous year budget, that is the current budget that we're in, the 2021 budget, which means our unassigned fund balance at the end of the year, at May 31 of this year, should be probably closer to that 39%, but wanted to emphasize that as well. So in summary, the levy increase as presented to you was 3.6%. If we use some of the stimulus money that's coming to local governments, that'll take us down to the 2.98%. Expenses went up 2.98%, which again is, truth be told, pretty lean considering that the budget is absorbing all those retirement costs, still adding half a police officer to the budget in addition to the 1.5 we budgeted last year. This will bring our full complement of police officers for the new year to 23. Plus, it also includes an additional $50,000 for de-escalation training for our officers. Takes into account, as I mentioned, that additional net principal and interest which I think was just over 129,000 in additional net principal and interest for that $13,250,000 bond. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'll stop talking.
Just to put it in perspective, the village's portion of the village budget is approximately 18 to 19% of your village tax bill. And so a movement of approximately $85,000 is a movement of a whole point. So as much as 2.9, it's certainly we'd like it lower, but basically a point movement is approximately $85,000 in different spending. Trustees, any comments on the budget before I offer it for public comment?
Jim, with the leaving of 38% of the unassigned fund balance, that's still, can you just explain to the community how that's still a very good number and a very high number relative to where we would expect it to be or want to be?
Yes, absolutely. And I can say, look, we just did that. We just had that bond issue, as you know. We just had our AAA bond rating reaffirmed by Moody's, one of only a handful of communities, less than a handful within Westchester, and a select number across the country. But to maintain that, Moody's absolutely wants to see that communities have a significant fund balance that can handle dips in the economy. And I can say within Westchester, even that unassigned fund balance of 38% is probably one of the highest in the county.
So so Jim, just to make sure everyone understands, fund balance in the corporate world would really be considered retained earnings, sort of in the corporate world. So, and if you're not speaking, could you please go on mute? There's echo here. And then, to your point, Mary, when you say 38%, what that means is that we have a fund balance equal to approximately 38% of our total spending. So great question, Mary. And it's so important for people to understand that that's really at the heart of our AAA rating, as well as having a large, over $2 billion tax base. But that's the critical issue for us as trustees in terms of managing our fund balance.
Okay, any other trustee comments? Okay, see.
I just want to say how extraordinary it was. In addition to Mary, you already commended Jim and Lori for all the work they did on preparing the budget. But, I think the entire staff at Village Hall to keep the expenses, so low while still providing the full suite of services that this village did. We didn't have major shutdowns, they were open, every day, pretty much normal hours. So I think that's all just, extraordinary that despite all the issues of last year and all the problems that people had to work through, that the level of services that the village provided was really seamless and excellent.
Yeah, and I should also emphasize here, remember, when we talk about the general fund budget, our budget of just over $18 million, that includes almost $1.5 million for our library. The library is largely funded. And to your point, Trustee Knapp, when you take into account that we're doing all this with a total of 63 employees, 65 employees, when we bring those two officers on board, it's a lot. And I can say we remained open during the entire pandemic. Staff made a lot of changes. The non-essential personnel were set up to work from home. We set it up so that even the calls into the main number would show up, but roll over to their to staff's cell phone. And almost everyone here does multiple jobs. I know I kind of mentioned this in the work session, but even our assistant Stephen was out there clearing the paddle courts of snow to make it available to players, because this just shows you the kind of uninterruption in service stuff. Others have closed their facilities, and here, even during a pandemic, right after a snowstorm, we were trying to make them available to people because why? Because you're trying to also encourage outdoor activities. But so other staff, Margaret Parr in the front office, she handles parking. She continued to process, sadly, a lot of death certificates, hundreds of death certificates last year remotely, and continued to make them available for all the for the funeral homes at a moment's notice. Building permits, we, like some of the other building departments, we actually did inspections virtually. And we have big screen TVs in the building department, and the contractors, for those that we were able to do remotely and that you can with some of these inspections, they took the camera around the residence. And this is, these were different things that had to be done a little bit differently. So yeah, and of course, between the DPW and the police, it was just nonstop for all of them. So, it's lean, and even though the tax cap comes up with a number such as 1.3%, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to personnel, we need to remain competitive with our colleagues, and that will mean salary increases for police, for example, that are higher than that. Our library employees operate under the Civil Service Employees Association contract, and that contract had a 2.5% increase. So when you start to look at those labor agreements, that 1.3% that's allowable under the state just doesn't cut it. So,
Okay, yes,
Mayor-
Trustee Fredericks.
Yeah, I'd just like to, again, extend my sincerest thanks and appreciation to everyone on professional staff at Village Hall. It's really obviously been a very difficult year for a lot of people. But I think we can all fairly say that the Village Hall has really been part of a lot of solutions rather than part of adding to people's already extensive problems. So that's really a great credit to you, Jim, and everyone else in Village Hall. I just wanted to flag again just how small this increase is when you look at some of the additional things we're compensating for, an additional 50,000 in police training. I think all you have to do is read the TV or watch the TV to understand that police training is important for all constituencies concerned. It's important for citizens, and it's important for police officers. I mean, we can't expect our professional police staff to respond at the highest standard of best practices unless we give them the training to do so. People aren't just born with a computer chip in their mind as to how to handle difficult situations. And again, I think this goes to some of the excellent recommendations of the committee that Bob Underhill chaired. And I think that's just a down payment on a very important investment. And I think the fact that the village has had to make up so much lost parking revenue, I think it's just extraordinary, the job that Jim and others have done, that we are facing a bigger shortfall. And though I think we all agree that you don't want accounting gimmicks at all in a budget, I think matching the 65 or the additional monies coming in from America Cares, which we're going to hopefully get in the future, but matching it really to this current period when the costs have been accrued is really appropriate, rather than somehow deferring that benefit to a year when the costs hopefully won't be as severe. So I think that's an excellent sort of matching of cost and expenses in the relevant time period for when expenses are accrued and when we're getting some reimbursement from the state. So I think that's not gimmickry. I think that's really just appropriate accounting matching principles really at work. So again, Jim and Lori Voss, if you're on the phone, hats off to you for really great work.
Thank you.
Okay, any other trustees?
So Mary, just a question. Are we deciding which way we want to go with the version that we worked on the budget workshop, or the one that we've received since with the
I think we decide that, if I'm correct, at when we authorize the budget next week. Is that correct, Mr. Palmer?
Yes, so what I think I would recommend at this point is,
Right.
after we, of course, take the public comments, you can choose to close the public hearing if you like. And then, yes, presuming that you adopt the tax cap override legislation, we do have to wait 10 days.
10 days.
But it would be helpful from my perspective if you're leaning towards using that additional 65,000. But yes, I think post closing the hearing and prior to meeting next week, if there's any other comments that you give me on that, that would be helpful. But of course, and I should mind, we have to adopt the budget by May 1st, but we have to have that 10-day waiting period. But it would be helpful to know if everyone would like to get it to below that 3% and is comfortable with using the, I should call it the American Rescue Plan, I think it is. So it would be using that 65,000 for that.
I don't
Now
know.
I'd like to open the public hearing up on the budget to anyone who is on the call.
Mary, Mr. Abbott has his hand up, I can see.
Yes, Mr. Abbott.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to precede anyone, but I was at the workshop and I appreciated it very much. I learned a lot, and I especially appreciated that my questions were answered. I'll open with a comment following on what I said at that meeting, which is I believe that the trustees should be paid. Those who run for elected office should be paid, just as the judges who run are paid. And I'm saying that in the context of this budget conversation. My reasons for saying that I will hold for the very end of the meeting. And then I'm going to expand on it in the newspaper, Bronxville Surrealist at thebronxville.com. And then my question is, and I'm very sorry, I've been very distracted this past week. It's been really quite awful and I'm mishearing things. I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly that the mayor describing the budget as 18 to 19%. I'm confused. It's the village part of the budget is 18 to 19%. Is that describing village administration? Is it describing the totality of 200 Pondfield Road, including the police department, and then including 201 Pondfield Road, the library? I'm sorry, I'm so confused about that number. I'm not hearing things clearly.
No, that's a perfectly fair question. That is the totality of the levy from the library government side. So anything that we are trustees of is police department, DPW, library. It's everything you think of as municipal.
So the rest is literally the school?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And I knew that, but I'm sorry. I'm still blown away by that. I think that's really headline news, actually. That number is so small.
Well, we do have some decent revenues, and we try to, frankly, our staff is smaller now than when I was a trustee 20 years ago. It's probably smaller by 10 or 12 people. So people are just doing multiple jobs, and it's frankly a credit to the people who work here and work at the library. So
I'm in complete agreement, Mayor, and I will say my dereliction of duty is it's very apparent to me I need to pay more attention to what's going on at the school in terms of the spending there. So thank you very much for your time.
Right, and just to put it another way, so as the mayor explained, our tax levy is just over $11 million. The school levy is almost 50 million. Hence the five times. So, because remember, Bronxville is the only village that actually collects school taxes, and we do so with one combined village school tax bill. So while residents and property owners, commercial property owners, pay one tax bill at the end of the day, 19 cents of every dollar is for the village piece, which is on the left-hand side of the bill, And the right-hand side of the bill is the school piece. And again, if you just look at the levy, our levy at the end of the day is $11 million after taking an $18 million budget, subtracting out the non-real property tax revenues, using 925,000 fund balance, takes us to that levy amount of 11 million, and the school levy is almost 50 million. Sorry.
Okay, any other comment from anyone in viewing? No, seeing none, then I need a motion to close our public hearing. Trustee
move it.
Barron's moved it, Deputy Mayor Underhill seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I would like a motion to open our third public hearing. Okay, Deputy Mayor opened it, and I need a second for our third public
Second.
hearing. And Trustee Fredericks opened it. All those in favor? Aye. And this is the issue we discussed of changing the parking time on Studio Arcade. And this was brought to us by Studio Arcade, as you know, has apartments, dental offices, doctor's offices, and a health spa. And they asked to have the time increased from an hour and a half to 2 hours because many of their services take that long, and sometimes the service plus perhaps some waiting time takes that long. So this would help patients and customers and frankly residents. And we didn't hear a single negative from anybody who lives there, works there, or patronizes the offices, but we have to do it, council, correctly by public hearing when you amend the vehicle and traffic laws. So that in essence is what that is. Trustees, any questions on that? I know we discussed it, but just knew we had to put it in the proper legal form. Okay, open to anyone in the public who would like to comment on the parking change at Studio Arcade from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, Deputy Mayor moved it and Trustee Knapp seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Hearing is closed. All right, Mr. Palmer, we'll go on to new business, which relates some of it relates back to our public hearings.
Right, so the first one then is the tax cap override, which we just went through.
All right, do I have a motion as stated in our hearing to override the property tax cap?
So moved.
Okay, Trustee Knapp, and then followed by Trustee Barron's. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And then I think the next one is just the follow-up on my description of the local law, the Studio Arcade parking change. And if trustees are amenable, I would ask for a motion to accept the change and a second.
So moved.
Okay, and a second.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Trustee Barron's. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And I think this is customarily, these are our annual appointments, which we do not only just by custom, but by law at our April reorganization meeting. And they do need to be read into the record. So we have Deputy Mayor for a 1-year term, Robert Underhill, Village Clerk, 1-year term, James Palmer, Village Treasurer and Receiver of Taxes, 1-year term, Lori Voss. Deputy Village Treasurer, 1-year term, Caitlin Fitzpatrick. Village Assessor, 1-year term, Jerry Gallo. Village Historian, 1-year term, Ray Gesselbrock. Village Prosecutor, 1-year term, Ronnie Ritz. And then the auditor to the Board of Trustees is actually the village administrator for a 1-year term for purposes of reviewing and approving our monthly abstracts of purchases as prepared by the village treasurer, administrator, and clerk. Auditor to the Justice Court is our treasurer, Lori Voss. Village auditor is O'Connor Davies. Signatures, checks drawn on the bank accounts of the Village of Bronxville may be signed by any of the 2 following: mayor, deputy mayor, village administrator, treasurer, or deputy treasurer. Checks drawn on the account of the Justice Court established for deposits of fines, fees, and forfeited bail shall be signed by the village justice. Bank transfers and federal wire transfers to be signed by any of the 2 following: mayor, deputy mayor, village administrator, or treasurer. For our procurement policy for goods and services, which are not subject to competitive bidding or purchased under state or county contract, the following methods of purchase will be used to assure the prudent and economical use of village funds. If the estimated annual purchase is between $1,000 and $299,000, we require 2 price quotes. If the amount is between $3,000 and $19,999, we will require 3 written quotes. If it's $20,000 or above, it must be circulated to at least 3 companies, and the contract must be approved by the mayor and the Board of Trustees. On to Public Works contracts amount between $1,000 and $4,999. 2 written quotes, $5,000 to $34,999. 3 written quotes, $35,000 or more, subject to publicly advertised bids and requests for proposals or RFPs. We must have 3 companies, and contract must be approved by the mayor and the Board of Trustees. Bank depositories, our authorized depositories for funds are currently JP Morgan Chase, Sterling National Bank, People's United Bank, and Westchester Bank. Surety bonds to be filed in the following amounts: all employees $200,000 per loss, premiums to be paid by the village. The official newspaper, we designate the Journal News as the official newspaper, and publication of legal notices will appear there as required. Just stop here. I know so many of you asked. The legislature did not pass the bill that allows electronic newspapers to be a paper of record. So we have to choose a print paper. Meeting dates in order of business. Regular meetings of the Board of Trustees will be 8 p.m. on the 2nd Monday of each month, excluding the month of August, when there is no meeting unless otherwise publicly noticed. Meetings subject to adopted rules of procedure, which we will put on our website, and they were last amended in 2020. Mileage reimbursement beginning on January 1, 2021, the standard mileage rates for use of a village car will be 56 cents per mile. Finally, boards and committees, and this is a place where we all say a huge thank you to the people that help us out on all these committees. The village just couldn't operate without the dozens of volunteers that populate all the committees. And to that end, on the Finance Committee, Leighton Welch and Donald Gray each agreed to be reappointed for a 2-year term. Planning Board, Larry Varenka, Michael Goldman, and Jim Hayden reappointed for a 5-year term. Design Review Committee, Neil Stefano, reappointed for a 2-year term. Zoning Board of Appeals, John Brown and Charles Law, reappointed to a 5-year term. Ethics Board, Donald Kennedy, John Precinct, and Wendy Riggs, each reappointed for a 2-year term. And our Library Board of Trustees, Robert Shearer and Kevin Charlton, each reappointed for a 3-year term. And Margaret Major and Diana Deckert, newly appointed to a 3-year term. And I just want to thank everybody for agreeing to all these various duties on behalf of the village. And Mr. Palmer, do you want to do, I think we're on to Arbor Day.
Mayor, it's Jim, if assuming after questions and so forth, if people are in agreement, would you be able to take an omnibus motion approving all of the appointments and procedures you just laid out?
Okay, so I need.
I think we
okay.
might have some questions, but.
Okay, trustees question. I'm sorry. Thank you, council.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have one question, which is one question and a comment. The question is the resolution that regular meeting dates be held at 8 p.m. on the second Monday. I think it's been our recent practice, but maybe it's just a COVID Zoom practice to have meetings earlier than that. And I'm just wondering, to the extent that this is a statement of practice, whether, Mayor, you anticipate it reverting to 8 p.m. or it's more of a 6 or 7 o'clock start date, what you foresee?
Well, good point, and we probably should put subject to, we've never done in my time anything but 8 p.m. because we had heard from, we often did work sessions starting at 6:30 or 7, depending on the workload, but we never started the public meeting until 8 because some residents, when they were commuting to the city, felt that they couldn't, get home and get settled and then get down to Village Hall till 8 o'clock. So that was a preference. But again, to your point, that was when times were very different. So perhaps do you think we should make that a little bit less stringent?
Well, on that point, that's why I did make a notation on there that parentheses, unless otherwise publicly noticed and posted. But that's entirely up to you. So when we haven't been going to the 8, obviously we've been noticing that as such. But yes, since we've been doing the meetings online, we've gone to a lower time. So I don't know if there's any pleasure on that or if we want to clarify it a little bit further.
I think we should just say, as changeable according, with prior notice. I think it's fine to leave it the way it is, because I think it's Mary's point is a lot of people aren't available in normal times until a later point.
So good point, Mr. Palmer. You had mentioned saying, and Helen's echoing it, unless otherwise publicly noticed and properly posted. That probably should go. Absolutely correct.
And then just a comment, Mayor. My understanding is that Martin Murr has been appointed to fill the vacancy as zoning board vice chairman to fill, I guess, the unexpired term of Stuart McIntosh is finishing the unexpected term of the prior chairman. And I just want to recognize Martin Murr in the record, because he's going to make a great vice chairman.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other trustee comments on any of our appointments? I mean, the one I mentioned, we get asked a lot why we can't use my hometown Bronxville as the paper of record. But legislator Pollen tried valiantly for us, and we could not get it passed because the print media lobbied very hard to keep it there. So any other questions? Then council recommended I do ask for an omnibus ratification of all
I'll
of
move
these
for adoption.
annual appointments
And the actions that you,
and the actions, So an omnibus appointment of all of the annual actions, annual board committees, and annual appointments. Do I have a
I'm sorry,
motion?
Mary, can I ask just a quick question? So other committees like the Green Committee, is that under a different categorization?
They don't have, we sort of added them, and I'm not sure what, I mean, that's for discussion. They're not a sitting committee that they're a little additional ad hoc committee. Now, it's to the trustees' decision whether going forward we want to add a Green Committee as a permanent standing committee in the village. Currently, it's not, frankly, because it's so new. So their appointments don't have to reach this level, but that's certainly a discussion we can have, whether we want the Green Committee to frankly be a standing committee. Any other questions? Okay. Then could I have a motion, as I had mentioned, to accept the appointments and actions and boards and committees?
So moved.
Okay, trustee Knapp moved it, and do I have a second? And all righty, Deputy Mayor Underhill seconded, and all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And again, a big thank you to everyone. And Mr. Palmer, I will throw it back to you on something really, really nice, Arbor Day.
Yes, we do this each and every year. It's part of our Tree City USA program. And New York State recognizes Arbor Day as the last Friday in April every year. So that's what we have been doing. So it's simply a proclamation declaring Friday, April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the village of Bronxville. And it just recognizes all the efforts that we make for tree preservation and tree care, which really our shade tree budget alone is over $70,000. And with all the great volunteer groups that we have to help us on picking out some trees and maintaining what we have is impressive. So we should always get credit for it.
Okay, then do I have a motion accepting the village's involvement in Arbor Day?
I have
Yeah,
a quick
Bill.
question, which is if residents want to propose planting a tree, but it's a tree, let's say, that's in the first 10 feet of their property, which is technically village property, is there a well-established procedure for them to get permission at, let's say, their own cost to plant a tree on village property if it's on a streetscape?
To be honest, there is no well-established policy. Counselor, is that something we should have?
it's getting more common for municipalities to establish a policy. Of course, when plans come before the land use boards, often the land use boards will make that one of the issues they address is what will the landscaping be, where will it be, who will maintain it, and so forth. A referral to public works sometimes but more and more now municipalities are establishing a procedure for that, ranging from as simple as having it administered by public works all the way to, in some cases, if it goes beyond a tree and it deals with retaining walls and things like that, right up to action by the village board. So I think it's probably time I can talk to Jim and get a sense of the experience, and we can put together a set of procedures for recommendation to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work on that, maybe someone on the Bronxville Green Committee, because I know just incidentally, and I'm sure you get this impression, Mayor and other trustees do, that there are plenty of residents who'd be happy to put in a lovely tree on their streetscape and happy to do it at their own expense. And if there was sort of a way to encourage people or alert them to an established procedure with some minimal guide rules, that might be a good thing.
Yeah, probably one of the most critical things now is to describe categories of trees, particularly to use trees that don't pull up the sidewalks, whose roots don't pull up the sidewalks, and who have a canopy high enough not to block automobile vision.
No
Right.
silver maples.
Right, I was going to say, right, and most of the residents are pretty good about calling and reaching out to us if they want to plant a tree, because, right, and to your point, I think one of the biggest pieces is to make sure it's not something that's going to be a sightline issue or a tree that's also going to be planted over any existing infrastructure, water lines, things that gas lines, things of that nature.
Lines.
Yep. Or most importantly, right, what we've learned is as we've been doing our inspections on a sanitary sewer, sadly, because we have some of our sanitary sewers that are actually located in easements behind homes. What happened over the course of decades ago is that people didn't like a manhole on their property, and over time it got covered with topsoil and then eventually a tree. So believe it or not, we've had to spend some time trying to track down manholes that got covered over time by plantings. So anyway.
So maybe Trustee Fredericks, you would connect with council and Jim Palmer, because that's a very good point, because frankly, we don't have any rules. And it would be good to have a policy. So thank you.
Well, maybe just a little plant a tree icon on the village website,
Yeah. Trustees, any other questions on the Arbor Day resolution? Okay, I think I received my motions to accept it. So I'm just going to ask if all those are in favor.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
motion passes. Okay, I think, Mr. Palmer, we're down to security cameras at our new DPW facility.
Yes, so this request is for you to authorize the purchase of $50,118 for computer cameras, panels for security for our doors for the new DPW building, and to authorize the funds come from fund balance. So, and as you might recall, when we constructed the DPW building, we certainly put in the extra conduit for the security cameras, but it was not part of what we scoped out with the project, because we have a particular vendor that we use with the Service Village Hall, which is cost effective. So anyway, after spending a significant amount of time with the police chief and going over this with the DPW firm, we've come up with a proposal that you have before you that covers cameras on the exterior, necessary cameras on the inside, as well as the secure panels for the doors that also access the building. So it meets our needs.
Okay, trustees, any questions on this camera installation resolution?
And Jim, you think the best use is grabbing that money from the general fund unassigned fund balance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to authorize the purchase?
A motion.
Trustee Barron's moved it and Trustee Frederick seconded, and all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, great. Then the next item is for a change order for the DPW building. So the resolution that you have before you is to approve a change order of $40,886.95. And this is for a change in the site plan for the project that I had forwarded to all of you, which allows for some additional improvements, principally an access road from the PD, from the police department parking lot to the existing rear village employee lot and onto Palumbo. There's a lot of additional benefits of having that, not the least of which is it allows for an additional ingress for the PD, which is useful in the event that Pondfield is not the most efficient method if they have to respond to an incident. So this was something that was not part of our original site plan, but then there's also some additional tree planting, some additional sloping, but most of it is related to that access point and the additional curbing. I should say that this cost will be covered through the project contingency that we have under the general construction bid, which was $3,206,000. So we have a little over 100,000 in contingency. We did have to use some of that for the temporary, excuse me, a temporary setup behind Village Hall for parking for police vehicles and so forth. But I think this worth it. You could see how nice that final site plan came out because frankly, coming out onto Pondfield during certain times of the day can be exceptionally busy, if not impossible, with cars queuing at the traffic signal. So giving the police that additional option is useful. And we also have handicap spaces now down along Palumbo that someone could access, some additional handicap spaces for someone to come into Village Hall if necessary.
Trustees, any questions on this change order?
Yeah, Jim, speaking of trees, I do see on the change order that 3 existing trees will be removed and then 8 shrubs are now being omitted from the final plan. So I don't see any additions for landscape, although I do see like a big amount for lawn restoration. So I just wonder what the tree and shrub situation will look like after.
We're going to be putting new trees in, but those existing trees, those 3 existing trees where it slopes down to Palumbo, those are going to be removed. 2 of which are
Rosemary, are you on the phone?
Are dying now.
Hello?
I'm sorry, let me just mute this one person. Anyway, 2 trees which are dying now, but those 3 trees will come down and those will be replaced. There will be plantings between the new police parking lot and the DPW and the rear of the DPW building. So there will be plantings there.
So they're in the existing,
Yes.
in the existing scheme. Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. It just unfortunately, yeah, those other trees are not in good shape anyway to begin with, quite frankly, the evergreen. It concerns me where it's located, but there will be new trees after they modify the slope there.
Okay, trustees, any other questions on the change order? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Okay, so moved by trustee Fredericks and seconded by trustee Knapp. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Okay, and the next item is the replacement of the DPW roof on the existing building. Frankly, we were able to get a really competitive bid to replace a majority of the existing DPW roof. This has been something that's been very concerned about. The additional slate roof is in poor condition, but we want that building to continue to be used for storage. And with the exception of the flat roof, which was replaced just before my arrival, this will be for the replacement of the rest of that, the slate roof, which includes the roof and along with all the molding around the roof for the area where the foreman's office is, the existing break room for the DPW guys. We have some potentially nice plans for the use of that area, including perhaps some training facilities for the police department. And then, of course, the rest of the roof over the existing mechanic bay and storage area. We were able to piggyback on a new bid program that I know you're aware of, Mayor, that the City of White Plains started. So the roof replacement is just over $66,000. Unfortunately, there is some asbestos that's located around the flues on the existing building. And that expense is just under $20,000. And then we have a remaining amount for some inspections and contingencies. But we've had a lot of subsurface investigation below that existing roof. And they're going to be taking off even the plywood. So it'll be down to the exposed beams. But as you know, it's in poor condition. We really want to get this done. And because we do also have some other uses for the building. So also with this, we would recommend that we use fund balance for this improvement. And I was told today that, upon your approval, they'd be able to start in less than 3 weeks. So I think that's really a good thing.
You might want to mention we had to remove a lovely family of raccoons from it while we
Yes.
were doing our due diligence. So
Yes, I've been monitoring our traps daily.
yes, an entire family was relocated.
Yes.
But any questions by the trustees? Yes, Bill.
I just have one quick question. Is the roof fully covered by the village's property insurance? I mean, I love slate roofs as much as anyone, and if you avoid a really bad hailstorm, they obviously last 3 times longer than most other kinds of roof. But the one possible risk is you get a bad hailstorm, which shatters a lot of slates. I assume the cost of a replacement roof would be covered by existing property insurance on the
Yes,
property.
it would be, although I should clarify, we're going to use the same shingles, the same asphalt shingles that we have on the salt storage shed building, but it looks like slate, quite frankly, and matches up real well. We'll have the same color, so it will actually be asphalt though, to look like the slate roof. But yes, all our buildings are absolutely covered through the insurance company, including the roofs.
Okay, so is anything going to be like real slate as opposed to slate facsimile in what the proposal is?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I also
Any
like things that
other-
look like slate, so just to be
Right.
clear.
Any other trustee questions on this? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to authorize the roof replacement?
So moved.
Okay, trustee Fredericks moved it, and I need a second.
Second.
Okay, trustee Barron second, and all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion passes. And we're down to our final resolution for this evening, which is a really special one and a new one for the village.
Okay, I don't know, Helen, did you want to do this, or did you still want me to do this one, or?
You go through the
Okay.
official stuff and I'll make a comment at the end.
Sure. All right. Okay, so actually Stephen was kind enough to do up this resolution for us, since he's going to be designated as our coordinator for this project. And this is the resolution for the establishment of the task force to implement the actions required under our Climate Smart Communities Pledge. And it identifies all the members under the chairmanship of Ellen Edwards, with trustee Knapp as the village board liaison. And of course, Stephen will be the coordinator. So, and this is to help us implement all those 10 points that we previously identified under the pledge. So hopefully help us continue to be on the effort to become green and to apply for additional grants. And I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just we had our first a Zoom meeting of the task force, and it's a great group of people on the committee, well coordinated by Stephen and chaired by Ellen. So there's a lot of material potentially to cover, but I think we've done a number of steps already, and now the work is going to be to look at all the different initiatives that we could get points for to qualify as a bronze or silver smart community. But then we're looking at what are the priorities, what are the timelines, what are easily obtainable, what are things that are longer term goals, and trying to learn from what other communities have done, because there are other communities around us who have been doing this for quite some time and have learned a lot of valuable lessons. So to the extent that we can piggyback on some of their ideas and experience, will really put us in good stead. So I just want to mention also that the Green Committee did a really nice article about green landscaping in my hometown, Bronxville, this past week. And they also included a survey to ask residents to respond on their input on potentially extending the gas-powered leaf blower ban into spring or fall months, and just asking people what their thinking would be on that. So I encourage everybody who's listening to fill out that survey. And I don't know if there's a way, Jim or Mary, maybe can we put that survey on the village website just to encourage more people to respond? Because I think, as we're looking towards potentially expanding the gas-powered leaf blower ban, the more input and ideas we get from the residents, the better.
I
Yes.
can imagine, Jim, we can't put it on the village website, correct?
For the link for people to be able to access it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
think we can do that. Sure. Yeah.
I think there's just a way, I know there's a great core group of people who read my hometown Bronxville, but there are a number of people who don't. So, or what whatever other channel would be useful
Sure.
to get people to respond.
Okay. Any other, thank you, Trustee Knapp, for being our liaison and taking this area on for us, and Stephen Shallow, who's on the call and is a village staffer, for being our in-house coordinator. I think this is really exciting, and just so people know, there's committee members, there's going to be student representatives, representatives from the hospital. We have a village resident who's director of the Pace University Energy and Climate Center, and he has agreed to be on the committee. So it's a very varied and very astute committee. So thanks to everyone. Any other trustee questions on our Climate Smart Committee?
So Mary, as you mentioned, this is going to be a kind of a task force committee, not a standing committee, correct?
Exactly. The Climate Smart is kind of, believe it or not, under the umbrella of the Green Committee, but in order to be a climate smart community and meet those standards to be so recognized, you have to form a separate climate smart committee. So it's, is that a fair description of it, Helen? Am I saying that
Yes.
correctly?
Right. It's kind of the first thing that the committee has to do is form this task force, get it approved through resolution by the village, and then have 2 public meetings in the first year, I believe. So that's what the next steps will be.
All right. Any
Thanks
other
for doing that.
trustee?
Thank you,
Alan,
Helen.
if we
That's
keep
great.
meeting by Zoom, I think that you should come to future meetings with like a placard that you could raise showing our point total from, quarter by quarter.
I know
sort of
Mary
like a
wants to see that.
Telecom
Mary wants to get us right
scoreboard
up
or something.
into platinum level as soon as
Yes,
possible.
yeah.
Well,
Oh, thank you, Helen. It looks like it's going to be like a great new addition to the community.
Trustee Underhill, did I?
Just say thank you, Helen. I echo Bill's comments.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
me too. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, thanks.
yeah. All righty, do I have a motion to accept the new committee?
I'll move it.
Okay, and then a second by trustee Knapp, moved by deputy mayor Underhill. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, that is the end of our agenda business, but this is the opportunity for the trustees to make comments on anything, or did we miss something or announce something? Feel free at this juncture. Trustee Fredericks.
First of all, Mary, you were so gracious as to congratulate Bob and myself for our election. I think it is only appropriate that we extend the compliment and congratulations to you, Mayor, on your reelection. And I think we all echo your comments about looking forward to working together the next 2 years as a team on this board. And then just one matter of more general public comment. I think that the chief brought to the board's attention a vehicular accident at Pondfield and Midland recently. Happily, no serious injuries as I understand it, but just so that members of the public are aware, there was a question in the 5-year plan survey of whether to sort of stick with an intersection or possibly doing a roundabout at that intersection instead. And I think that probably is something that the board should be looking at in the medium term. And I'm certainly very curious to hear other residents' comments on it. I mean, change is always sort of difficult, particularly for such a signature piece of real estate in the village, the Four Corners. But I just wonder whether you have anything to add, Mayor, to that in terms of what you see as a timetable, perhaps for looking into that further.
Well, I think it has to, frankly, go into our next work session because it's something that when I mentioned, the walkability of the village is obviously to make it as safe as possible. And I think a revisit to the Pondfield Midland intersection is something that has to be on the front burner for us. And so I think our group needs to put it as an agenda item at our next work session. And I think you're right. Any input from the public on their views on it is so welcome as we deliberate. So I agree totally with you, Bill. Okay. Any other trustee comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open it to anyone listening on any topic and just ask Mr. Palmer to help me just figure out the order of speakers.
Sure, I think there's a gentleman by the name of Hugh that had his hand up.
Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, and good
Okay.
evening.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Hugh McKiernan. I'm 21 Alden Place, and I have an inquiry of Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer, do you intend at any time to issue a utilities permit for Con Edison to lay pipes up to 8 Alden Place?
Hey, Jim, this is Jim Stout.
Sure, Jim.
So I just want to remind you that I think the only application I'm aware of from Con Ed, and probably the only one we would be involved with, is for a street opening permit on Midland Avenue. Relative, and possibly what wires would go in that street opening may travel to Alden Place, but the village would not be issuing a permit to Con Ed to wire something in a Alden Place, which is a private drive. I think what's pending from Con Ed is an application for a street opening permit in Midland, just to clarify.
Yes,
Will-
exactly, yes.
Will you be issuing that permit?
The answer is, council and I were discussing that today, and probably, yes, as of right now, I see no reason why that permit to Con Ed to access the manhole on Midland should not be issued. Yes.
Is it going to be gas or gas and electricity?
I think it's an electrical service,
Gas and electric. Okay,
just electric, not gas.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Betsy Hardy.
Thanks. Make sure,
Hi.
okay, making sure that I'm not muted. Before I say what I was, actually planned to say, I just want to say how happy I am that the Public Works building is going up. When I think about what the DPW staff did for us this year, it's beyond belief. And I'm so happy that they have a decent place to work, to change, have a decent break room, have, just a place to get warm in the winter. It's the timing couldn't be better, really. Anyway, I
Well, you
found
were
out,
always a big proponent of that, so I thank you, and it's coming to fruition.
yeah, I'm really happy because I wanted to be sure, since it was going to be done, I wanted it done right, and done, not in a skimpy way, but really get what was needed.
Right.
So I'm really happy that's happening. Well, I could go on and on about what they did this year, but anyway, I'll get too emotional, frankly. Really, it was amazing. Like a year ago, I didn't, you didn't know, will anybody ever pick up the garbage again? It was that bad. Okay, anyway, over the weekend, I was told that the village is seriously considering going in with Lawrence Hospital on building a parking structure on top of the Maltby lot. And so I'm partly looking for accurate information. And then I don't like talking about something without really knowing the facts. So I went digging back into the survey results from the, from I could think it was 2019, and then to the new 10-year plan, village plan. And I kind of went, oh, I didn't realize, it kind of sailed by me that Lawrence Hospital was, wanted the village to go in with them on a new parking structure there. So what I was told, and I'm partly checking to see is this accurate, was that I think what they're proposing, or maybe the village jointly is proposing, is a 5-story structure that would cost $12 million with 250 spaces for Lawrence and 250 spaces for the village. So if that's not the case, stop me now. Is that actually something that's
There's been no, there's been no, to your question, it's sort of stunning to me what gets out there, but the real background is Lawrence Hospital came to us as they are providing a great deal of healthcare for Southern Westchester. Quite frankly, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, they're going into Larchmont, Mamaroneck, and they want to they need more space, not only for their patients, but they want to have more doctors' offices in Southern Westchester, not just Bronxville. And they want to be able to tell people that they can come over and get their MRIs or their breast exams. So they came forward to us. And so we're in preliminary conversations with them as to if we can, what kind of structure, but it's certainly something that we are, the hospital, quite frankly, needs. It would help Southern Westchester's economic development. It would be a great public-private partnership. But we're in conversation. We have, it has to be approved by the county legislature, for example. So we did not go into very detailed, spend a lot of village or hospital money on plans until we thought it would be approved by the various regulatory agencies. So Mr. Palmer, am I saying that correctly? And council, just to make sure I'm, council, is that a fair description of where we are?
Yes.
Yeah.
I bet, the hospital is asked, you have your own needs and you've had these preliminary discussions. That's
Yeah.
how I would.
So
that's how I would
we're happy to,
describe it.
we want to help the hospital thrive. We want more people to get health care at the hospital. We'd love to see more doctors' offices. They're looking at offices not only in Bronxville, but I know Mamaroneck, and we'd love to be a partner in their success. And if we can get some spaces in the partnership, all to the better. So, Betsy, that's honestly where we stand. But I think what you're hearing is a permutation that nobody's there. But the conversation is indeed happening.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not that large, I've got some serious concerns about building over the Maltby lot, and I don't really see a lot of benefit to village residents, from going in on a parking structure there. If it's tall enough to have enough parking to really help, to expand parking, it seems like if it's low enough to not have a negative impact on that area, it seems it's not going to give enough parking. In other words, it won't add to village parking, it just adds to hospital parking. And I'm concerned about just open space on that side of town and the impact on local residents there. And, if you have something looming over the park, it becomes very urban, and the paddle courts are practically flush up against the existing lot. And if you have a tall structure, they're going to kind of loom over the paddle courts, it'll loom over the field. I actually drove by this afternoon to just kind of refresh my memory of, what it looks like over there. And I was really surprised at how low the one Stone Place building is, the one that does have doctor's offices in it. It's really quite low. It's only 3 stories. And you could maybe get away with a parking structure that's 2 or 3 stories, but then you're not really adding village parking. It's just for the hospital, and it's not really all that much. So, I've got other concerns about a parking structure there too, including public safety, because it's right by the, the entrance to the parkway, and you can get people just, kind of pulling off into the parking structure, smashing some car windows, grabbing stuff, bolting before the police can get over there. So there's sort of that factor.
Well, I would argue that could happen now because it's open parking. It's even easier to see those cars, and any parking at this point for the hospital, any spaces would be helpful to, sort of helping provide access and healthcare in Lower Westchester. And no matter how many new spaces, the village would be in partnership, and the village would benefit. I mean, it might not be massive amounts of spaces, but we're such a small place that even, several dozen extra ones have helped a lot of people. And honestly, I think whatever we would build is more attractive than what's sitting there right now, which is, just rows of cars sitting there. So I definitely think it's worth the conversation. And just to clear up, I know there was a little bit of a rumor out there, we are not encroaching 1 inch on what is currently open land. Parking will only be on land that is already used for parking. And I
Right.
think that's important.
Yeah, I think the elevation, in other words, you go up a level and you're going to have a bigger impact in terms of, shading. It's just, more cars, more, it's a different environment. I'd feel more strongly about, 5 stories being too much, and maybe, 1 story up doesn't matter as much. But then there is, as you mentioned before, the farmer's market issue. But
I think I
would,
mentioned that,
you know,
that's like a strange red herring out there. The farmer's market, regardless of this parking structure, and honestly, I don't know where this is being perpetuated, but the farmer's market, should they not want to come to the west side, and that's entirely their choice, the farmer's market will have a home in perpetuity on the east side. So the thought that there is some either or between adding some parking and somehow getting rid of the farmer's market from the east side is completely wrong.
yeah.
It has the farmer's market will have a permanent home on the east side should that's what they choose. And I can assure you that 100%.
Yeah, my concern is really just is open space and park space for people living over there, or anybody who wants to go over there and, kick a ball around, or, do something like that. It was interesting to me when I went back to the survey, there was a question about which village park do you think most needs improvement? And the one, that got more attention than any other was Maltby. In other words, that was the one that the most people felt needed improvement.
Right.
So,
but none of the parkland is going to be touched. Again, that's kind of a misnomer that's out there.
well, no, it's not the question of touching it, but if something is built next to it, it has an impact on it. In other words,
Betsy, let me just say in 20 seconds or less, my understanding is the same as the mayor's, that this is sort of at the idea stage, and from long experience on the zoning board, you can get terrible plans for development, and you can get remarkably creative plans for development, and sometimes the development just won't fit. It's like a round peg in a square hole. I just think it's hard to prejudge. I also think it's a little hard to prejudge what the parking needs are going to be. Now that we're sort of going into a post-COVID situation, that may be a different dynamic. From a bulk and area and space perspective, I mean, fortuitously for people who might be proponents of development, I mean, it is on the north side of the park. So, east, west, and south. It won't have as much impact on light if there is something. But I hear all your points, Betsy, about size and mass and fitting in with the neighborhood. Just my 2 cents from my own individual perspective is that you don't want to shut the door on an idea stage, but obviously as ideas move closer to actual sketches and proposals, then you have really hard questions. But my understanding was the village wasn't going to invest a lot of time to come up with its own grand plan. It's like, someone else has a plan, they can build a better mousetrap. We won't rule it out, but we aren't going to be spending $50,000 in architectural plans doing it. We'll look at what the hospital may want to do in the first instance. I think, Mayor, that's what I've said is consistent with what you said earlier.
Exactly.
well, yeah, I mean, I understand. I don't think the village would want to be involved in sort of the internal planning process for the hospital, but it seems to me they've got some other options too. In other words, they've got it's kind of a strange parking structure that's right next to the hospital that could be reworked. And then there's the big garage that's directly across the street. So I don't know if they're already renting space in there or not, but I think you really ought to be urging them to look at alternatives and perhaps working with what they've got already.
And we're also, we're always open to any group who wants to talk to us about a public-private partnership, because kind of that's and if it would be a benefit to both of us, then it could be a win-win and you know, in the help Southern Westchester economy, I think there's just so many positives to having the conversation. And I think the important thing is that people don't jump the gun and already decide what's being built when it frankly is in the complete planning stages. So I would just
Yeah,
ask you
have you
to,
talked to them at all about, look, I'm getting that Zoom blur thing, but have you talked to them at all about, building maybe a joint project on the Parkway Road lot, next to Chase Bank?
no.
I mean, because that would be very convenient to the hospital and it's convenient to the train and stores. I mean, and that's always where
I appreciate it. I'm going to have to say, because I've been really strict with people about a 3-minute conversation. So in fairness to the other folks, I have to move on, but your points are listened to. Thank you. And you gave me an opportunity to also clarify some things out there that frankly are not very helpful to the discussion. But anyone else who is listening would like to talk on any topic? Oh, Mr. Abbott, I see your hand up. Mr. Abbott.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Sean Abbott. As Brer Abbott, I have been publishing an electronic newspaper since November 2019. And I just want to say this about any controversy about what the official newspaper should be. Absolutely, it should be printed. Absolutely, it should be on paper. There should be no controversy about that. And I'm saying that as a big reader of my hometown, Bronxville, which I know most people who live in Bronxville are interested in Bronxville. You read that. But the reason for being in print and why that's so necessary is simply this. Bronxville is a great place for our older citizens, and they don't have the same access that young folk do to electronic or necessarily want to. So as an electronic newspaper publisher, I must insist on printing on paper if you want to be legitimate. It's also something that gets archived, and that's very important. As for the Green Committee being a standing committee, absolutely. And put Ellen Edwards permanently in charge of it, please. Ellen Edwards is an excellent citizen of Bronxville and a great friend of the environment. And I understand the politics of this other subcommittee, but I want to say this, and I want to say this about the Green Committee. Give them teeth, install them permanently, and give them teeth so that you can't just plant a tree, because you got to be very careful about trees. Most of the trees that are planted are male. Not a lot of people know this. The trees that get planted are male trees, not female trees. And male trees means pollen. The reason male trees are preferred over female trees is because the fruit of the female tree is not always so lovely. And then attaching to that, to what Trustee Frederick said about slate roofs, again, having to do with nature and with the environment. And I appreciated very much Betsy Harding's alerting me to, I say, as you know, about parking lots, let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of parking lots. Let's not install new parking lots. Let's install more trees. I want to close by saying that I'm a week into what I will describe for the privacy of others as a personal crisis. And in that personal crisis, which had to do with Bronxville, I turned to one person, and that's Mayor Marvin. And Mayor Marvin, you have been so helpful to me, and I am so grateful to you. And I notice that I have been talking about paying the trustees, but I said that before you helped me so much in this personal crisis. Mayor Marvin is someone who will help you with bereavement. I can't see anyone right now. Can I be heard?
Yes, you
Yes,
can,
Sean.
Sean, quite
Okay.
well.
Okay, so Mayor, I mean, I turn to you in a crisis because you are such the representative of Bronxville. And if you need someone kind and warm and caring and who will listen to you in a crisis, you're the first person I thought of. And I say that as no one has been more critical of your policies than I have. But at the same time, I recognize this, that we have in Mayor Marvin, one of the historic leaders of Bronxville. And I'm saying all of this obviously because I'm writing a book, and the book is split in two. It's split between criticism and proposals for change. And I'm writing it from an environmental perspective, and I'm writing about the difficulties of being in local government, and I really do think that paying the trustees is important because it will open the candidate pool for trustees. There will be more people running to be trustees. But then I insist this will happen as a consequence of more people running for the trusteeship. And I shouldn't be hassling the trustees that you're running unopposed. Thank you for running at all. Who would be there if you trustees weren't there? But this is what will happen if you have more trustees running, I think. Mayor Marvin will win by a landslide. I know I've gone over time. I probably said too much, but I appreciate very much what I heard tonight. Betsy Harding, you're an excellent reporter. Thank you. I publish as Brer Abbott at thebronxville.com. And this is all in service to a book. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mary, so much for your help this week. I really, really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, Sean. You're quite welcome. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, and I just wish you well, Sean. And I just would ask a trustee for motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, trustee Fredericks, and then I need a second.
Second.
Okay, trustee Behrens, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We will close this month's meeting, and Mr. Palmer, I never remember, what is the date we will meet in May to have everyone back?
May 10th.
May 10th. So I hopefully will see everyone on this call on May 10th. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank
everyone.
you.